Welcome. In this video, I will talk about the central processing unit and its three main components: the arithmetic logic unit, registers, and the control unit. The CPU is where all instructions are executed in the computer. Some examples of these instructions that are executed are arithmetic, logic, and input and output operations. And to perform these instructions, the CPU has three principal components. First, the arithmetic logic unit. The arithmetic logic unit is where all the arithmetic and logic is going to be performed inside of the CPU. So it is where the instructions are going to actually be ran on the CPU. There's also registers. Registers are what are going to supply operands, aka data, to the arithmetic logic unit. So any data that the CPU needs to use is going to get pulled from main memory into the registers. And then also, any computations performed by the ALU, well, the result of those computations are going to be stored in registers as well. And lastly, we have the control unit. And the control unit is simply going to control which instructions and data are going to be pulled in from memory. It's going to decode instructions and instruct the ALU on which operations to perform, which components to use, and which registers to use. So it's just going to control the ALU and the registers and all the data coming into the registers. So these three components come together to make up a single physical core of a CPU. But most modern CPUs do not just have one single physical core, they have multiple cores, and this is what is known as a multi-core processor. These cores can then further be split virtually using software to create multiple virtual cores out of a single physical core. This is what is called multi-threading. Multi-core processors are very common, and almost every processor on the market is a multi-core processor. Multi-threading, on the other hand, is more commonly used in higher-end CPUs, but there are still some lower-end CPUs that do have multi-threading. Intel and AMD, the two most popular brands of CPUs, have their own versions of multi-threading. Intel has a proprietary version called hyper-threading, and AMD has a version called simultaneous multi-threading. Lastly, one thing to note, the CPU also has a small memory, which is called cache. And this cache is just an intermediate memory between RAM and the CPU, or, well, the registers more technically. And, well, technically, since there is this intermediate memory, the RAM isn't directly interfacing with the arithmetic logic unit, but this intermediate memory and the registers are parts of the CPU, and they all come together to make the CPU as a whole. Thus, RAM is still interfacing directly with the CPU. And here we have a diagram of the central processing unit, which has a single physical core. Note this ... right here signifies that there could be more than one physical core, but just for simplicity's sake on this diagram, only one physical core has been shown. But as we can see, a physical core has a control unit, which is going to interact with both the registers and the arithmetic logic unit. This control unit is going to tell the registers which data from memory to put into the registers, and it is also going to tell the arithmetic logic unit which registers to use, which settings to use, and it is going to provide the instructions to the ALU. The ALU is going to run all the instructions. It is going to use the data that's in the registers, and it is going to perform all the computations, the logic, etc. And the registers are going to hold all of the data that the arithmetic logic unit are going to use. And you can see by this little black arrow here that registers are going to talk to the ALU, and the ALU is also going to talk back to the registers. So the red arrows signify where the control unit is talking to, and the black arrow here in the middle signifies where data is going to flow. And that is all I have for you for now on the central processing unit, or the processor, or the CPU. Thank you so much for watching my video, and I'll see you in the next one.